Wetland Restoration, Tinker's Lab.
Each participating school will be showcasing its work with five students of this genre, mentored by two teachers. This year's theme is part of a larger effort that aligns with the Sustainable Development Goal 14 and 15. These goals aim to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem, manage forests sustainably, combat desertification, and halt biodiversity loss.
As we all are aware, plants and water have been extremely affected to cater the needs of the increasing population. The world loses approx 10 million hectares of forest each year. This year's theme aims on the importance of green spaces and how they help us to reverse the effect of climate change and purify the air we breathe in.
At this point, I would like to welcome our spokesperson for the day, the versatile Dr. Saumya Prasad.
Dr. Saumya Prasad is a PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. She is a tropical ecologist and research associate at Nature Science Initiative. She was formerly an assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University and Life Sciences. In addition to scientific research on the issue, she also focuses on on generating public awareness and action about plastic waste.
So, not taking much time, I would like to hand over the session to Soumya ma'am. All yours, ma'am.
Hello, students. Right now in Dehradun, just 5 minutes ago, we're having this very intense rain spell. I don't think I'll be audible. We'll just have to wait for this to slow down a bit. Okay, it's really, really bad right now. So, can we just like wait for 5 minutes? Am I audible at all? Uh,
Yes, ma'am, you are clearly audible.
yeah. So I can't hear a thing. Anyway, I'll. Okay, so just a second. Um, we'll just like just give me 5 minutes. I just give me 5 minutes. Meanwhile, please make me the co-host so that I can share the presentation here. Okay.
Ma'am, done.
Hello, ma'am. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Um, Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure if I'm audible. There's very heavy rainfall here in Dehradun, and network connectivity is also an issue.
Ma'am, you are clearly audible. We'll be sharing the PPT in just 1 minute.
Okay, yeah. So I'm very excited to meet all of you and like to welcome you to this program that is being launched by Little Scholars. Okay. For the senior school students, we have set up a simple program that will help us explore the challenges faced by biodiversity conservation in our own landscapes. Okay. And I'm having internet issues here, so I'll switch off the video. Okay. And yeah, thank you, Tisha. Yeah. As mentioned by the SETU team, okay, by training, I'm an ecologist. I spent most of my career working on forest ecology, trying to understand how we can address various stressors um, that our ecosystems face. Okay. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure आप सबने ये पंचभूत के बारे में सुना है कि ये हमारी एक आयुर्वेद में ये कॉन्सेप्ट है फॉर आवर हेल्थ ह्यूमन हेल्थ we need to maintain this balance between the five elements, okay? Air, Vayu, Agni, Jal, Prithvi, and the ether, the larger space, okay? Only when we are in balance with all these elements can human life thrive on this planet. It's a very ancient concept that defines Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, they do not treat elements by just the physical science, but also examining deeper relationships between a human being and his or her environment. Okay. Similarly, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, put forward this concept called the One Health. Okay. And the United Nations and World Health Organization outlined that for human life to thrive, we need to have balance between healthy people, healthy environment, and healthy animals. Okay, only when
का वो प्रोग्राम है उसमें नाम दिया गया, वो पढ़ रही हूँ, सुन रही हूँ लाइव क्लास।
Am I audible? Someone was speaking.
Yes, ma'am. You are clearly audible.
I can barely hear because of the rain. So if there's anything, please type it out on the chat box. The rain's very heavy, so I won't be able to hear. Am I audible? Okay. मेरी आवाज क्लियर है? ओके, ठीक है. सो यूनाइटेड नेशन वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने भी ये समझाया कि हमारी हेल्थ के लिए, ओके, वी हैव टू मेंटेन दिस बैलेंस एंड मेंटेन हेल्थी इकोसिस्टम्स, healthy people and healthy animals. Okay, next slide please. Okay. Next slide please. So अगर हम देखें आज पृथ्वी पर खासकर हमारे देश में less than 3% of the land area is set aside for protection of biodiversity. Okay, 97% of India's land area is for human use primarily. Okay, and biodiversity in India faces various threats, and the threats that biodiversity in India faces are similar to threats faced by biodiversity across the globe. The main one of the main issues is the loss of habitat. Okay, the change in land use. If you look at the history of the Tarai region, 1960s तक तराई में जहाँ काशीपुर, जसपुर, बासपुर आपके ये शहर है, यहाँ पर घास होती थी, जंगल होती थी, ग्रासलैंड्स. ओके, बरसातों में नदियां बढ़ जाती थी, और जब बाद में जब पानी कम हो जाती थी तो वहां पर घास उगती थी, और इन ग्रासलैंड्स में देवर राइनोस, एलिफेंट्स, टाइगर्स, and a lot of bird species, ghadial, okay, a whole diversity, plethora of species. But after malaria was eradicated from the Terai region, when humans started cultivating the Terai, which is very recent in the last 65, 70 years, okay, we seen that most of the grassland was converted to agriculture. Less than 0.05% of the Terai grasslands remain. Okay, they're among the most endangered ecosystems on Earth, and a lot of the Terai biodiversity, what used to be found in Kashipur, in Rudrapur, in Jaspur and Baspur, a lot of biodiversity here has become highly endangered. Okay, we also have the threat of pollution. Okay, we will be looking at this particular threat very carefully with one of the SETU challenges this year. Okay, alongside that, we have this very serious situation for many species, which is either hunting for many species. The larger, more charismatic species are hunted across the world, and even in India, we have a very serious hunting crisis. Though legally in India, with the Wildlife Protection Act from 1972, hunting is illegal. Still, there's widespread hunting in many parts of India. Okay. Several species are threatened by hunting in the Terai as well. Okay, we'll come to that. Now, in the last 2 decades, we have this very serious global situation with climate change, which makes every other thing much worse. The loss of habitats, उनके घर खत्म हो गई, प्रदूषण, हंटिंग, इन सबको और बुरा करने वाली एक सिचुएशन आ रखी है हमारे सामने, वो है क्लाइमेट चेंज. जैसे अभी इतनी तेज बारिश हो रही है, लगभग सब कुछ बह के चला गया. इंसानों ने अपना मकान बना के, मजबूत बना के हम बैठे हुए हैं. बट अब सोचिए, जंगल में, ग्रासलैंड्स में जो बायोडाइवर्सिटी है, जो जीव जंतु है, उनकी हालत आज. ओके, जब आग लगती है, जब बाढ़ आती है, जब पीने के लिए पानी नहीं होता है, okay, with the extremes in climate change, biodiversity is super stressed. Okay, alongside एक पांचवा जो थ्रेट है, ये बहुत कम लोग समझते हैं, इंसानों ने क्या किया है, इधर से उठा के उधर, इधर से उठा के उधर कर रखा है। कई बायोडाइवर्सिटी को, जीव जंतु को, जैसे कुत्तों को हम लाके हमने डोमेस्टिकेट किया। अब इंडिया में खासकर हमारी फेरल डॉग पॉपुलेशन बहुत हाई है और इससे काफी बायोडाइवर्सिटी पे असर पड़ रही है। ओके, सिमिलरली कई प्लांट स्पीशीज है विच आर इन्वेजिव, highly invasive. One of the most common examples is Lantana camara, introduced by the British into India as an ornamental plant in the 19th century. And today, it's taken over forests, agricultural lands, threatens both biodiversity and also causes huge losses to farmers. Okay. So, like talking of these panchabhutas that are driving biodiversity to extinction, we need to remember that these driving us extinction. If a whole bunch of species around us are going extinct, our extinction is also not very far away. Okay, right now we are in a phase of mass extinction called the Holocene mass extinction. I'll just come to that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So for the senior students from classes 9 to 12, we have designed a very simple challenge. Okay. First, I'll describe the structure of the challenge and then we'll go to the details. Okay. We will give you a choice of 3 problems in which you have to choose one problem that your school and your team will address. 3 में से एक प्रॉब्लम आपको चुनना है. ओके, जो प्रॉब्लम आप चुनेंगे उसके बारे में, प्लीज डोंट गो टू द, या stay here please. Okay, can I go to the next slide? Can we go to the next slide? अच्छा, पीछे, go back to the previous one. Okay. So सबसे पहले जो प्रॉब्लम आप चुनेंगे उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा रिसर्च करना है टीम्स को. You can do Google search or a Google Scholar search and find out the status of that particular problem at the global, national and local level. जैसे मैंने समझाया, जो प्रॉब्लम है सिर्फ इंडिया में या काशीपुर में नहीं हो रहा है, ये पूरी दुनिया में हो रही है कई प्रॉब्लम्स. एंड हमें इन चीजों की थोड़ा सा रिसर्च करनी है कि क्या है, व्हाट इज द स्टेटस ऑफ दिस प्रॉब्लम, व्हाट इज द लॉसेस दैट इज causing to biodiversity, society and economy. Okay, then you have to choose a particular study area. It can be your own landscape, आपके घर आपके स्कूल के आसपास जो एरिया है उसमें भी आप ये रिसर्च कर सकते हो. तो जो स्टडी एरिया आप चुनेंगे उसके बारे में आपको डिस्क्राइब करना है एंड उस इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम दैट यू हैव चोजन. जो 3 प्रॉब्लम्स आपके सामने प्रेजेंट करेंगे उसमें से एक प्रॉब्लम चुनिए और आपकी जो एरिया है उस प्रॉब्लम का स्टेटस आप उस एरिया में डिस्क्राइब करेंगे. साथ साथ आपके एरिया की रेनफॉल, क्लाइमेटिक पैटर्न्स, सॉइल, दी काइंड ऑफ वेजिटेशन, फ्लोरा, फौना, उसमें जो है उन सब चीजों की एक ब्रीफ डिस्क्रिप्शन देनी पड़ेगी आपको. ओके, the third thing that you'll have to do is try to describe the history of land use. यानी यहाँ पर पहले क्या था, आप अपने दादा दादी, नाना नानी या स्कूल में कोई जो सीनियर पर्सन है उनसे बात करके पता कर सकते हैं कि यहाँ पर पहले कैसा था. ओके, फैक्ट्री बनने से पहले, खेत इतना फैलने से पहले यहाँ पर हमारे इलाकों में क्या क्या होता था, यहाँ पर कैसा था लैंडस्केप. ओके, एंड इस जो हिस्ट्री है उसकी इम्पैक्ट जो है बायोडाइवर्सिटी पे और सोसाइटी पे डिस्क्राइब कीजिए. फाइनली जो मेन डिजाइन स्ट्रैटेजी है, ओके, हम इस प्रॉब्लम को कैसे सॉल्व करें वो भी सोचना है. आप अपना रिसर्च करके देखिए ग्लोबली क्या कर रखे हैं. आपको इजीली एक गूगल सर्च पे मिल जाएगा कि कोई भी प्रॉब्लम हो, पोल्यूशन हो, कोई भी हो, आप देखेंगे ग्लोबली नेशनली भी कई जगह सॉल्यूशंस ढूंढ रखा है लोगों ने, उसका एक छोटा सा समरी बनाइए। एंड फाइनली ये आपका फाइनल जो है ये आपकी अपनी आइडिया है, आपकी एरिया में, आपकी स्टडी एरिया में, आपकी प्रॉब्लम के लिए आप खुद सोल्यूशन डिजाइन करेंगे। ओके, ये सोल्यूशन आप एक प्रेजेंटेशन मोड पे ला सकते हो, नहीं तो एक मॉडल बना सकते हो, चार्ट्स या जो भी इसकी या फिजिकली भी आप वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करके दिखा सकते हो। ओके, सो एम आई क्लियर? वी विल शेयर ऑल दीज डिटेल्स विद यू। अभी से आप इसके बारे में स्ट्रेस लेना शुरू मत कर, डोंट हैव टू वरी, इट्स क्वाइट सिंपल। Okay, it's just we are just training you to identify a problem and think like an engineer to solve that problem. Okay, locally. Next slide. Next slide. The challenges for group A are sorry, there is some problem with the numbering there. Just look at the first 3 points. The last 3 are actually not bullet points. There are only 3 main options we are giving you. Among the 3, you need to pick one. The first one is wetland pollution. आपकी जो आपके आसपास कोई अगर रिजर्वॉयर हो, डैम हो और उसमें अगर प्रदूषण बढ़ रहा है प्लास्टिक की या सिवेज की, उसकी सोल्यूशन ढूंढने के लिए हमने ये प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफाई किया है। एंड इस प्रॉब्लम की जो एक्सपर्ट है मिस्टर पंकज बल्ला, आज थोड़ा व्यस्त है, वो अभी 2-4 दिन में आपको इस प्रॉब्लम की डिटेल्स आके समझाएंगे। okay? The second and third problem is what I will focus on today, which is invasive species and endangered species. Okay, with respect to invasive species, we will need the teams to select a management plan to address the invasive species. Okay, and as I mentioned before, invasive species cause huge losses. Okay, both economically and ecologically. Okay, और हमारे चारों तरफ भरे हुए अब invasive species. Okay, the third challenge before us, in front of us today, is to try and conserve an endangered species which is found in Udham Singh Nagar district called the Finsbaya. It's highly endangered. Less than 500 birds probably will go extinct by the end of this century if people in Udham Singh Nagar district do not take steps to conserve the species. So I will put this proposal in front of the schools of the SETU program to come up with a plan of action that we can take forward to authorities, things we can do with local panchayats, things we can do with local communities, fishermen, other stakeholders that are involved to save this particular species. Okay, so am I clear about the 3 problems that we have put forward for the senior students? The first one is to address wetland pollution. The second is to address invasive species. The third is to address the conservation of a highly endangered species found in Udham Singh Nagar district. Okay. The next 4, 5, 6 are not problems exactly. Those bullet numbers have come up in my PPT. Please ignore them. What we need the teams that have enrolled for SETU to do is identify which of these problems you want to work on. 1, 2, or 3. Pollution, invasive species, or endangered species. And you need to communicate this to the SETU team within this week. Okay. Equal number of teams will be assigned to each problem. So problem assignment will be on a first come first basis. Suppose we have 10 teams, or suppose we have 9 teams and 3 have chosen wetland pollution and 3 have chosen endangered species. Okay, the last 3 will only be left with an option to choose invasive species. So please try and identify your problem as soon as possible and communicate it to the SETU team. We need equal number of participating schools for each problem. Thank you. Okay, the next slide, please. Are there any doubts about how this challenge is being defined or the problems that have been identified? कोई अगर सवाल हो तो हम ले सकते हैं। Looks like there are no further questions here. We'll move to the next, the second challenge. As I said, Mr. Bala will be coming to you in a couple of days. We don't have to complete this challenge within a week. You have sufficient time. The SETU team will explain to you. You have time till, I think, end of September to complete this challenge. There's sufficient time. Okay. A lot of this work is largely Google search based. Okay. Some of it is based on interviews that we'll do, and some of it will be based on your own creative, innovative ideas to solve this problem. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, the first problem related to wetland pollution will be defined by Mr. Bala in a couple of days. Meanwhile, let me dive into the second problem, invasive species. Okay. India is home to over 45,000 plant species, of which nearly 2,000 are invasive. Okay. And if you look at insect diversity, we have over 50,000 species, of which nearly 1,000 are invasive. But if you go to island ecosystems, be it the Andamans or Lakshadweep, or even Sri Lanka, or any of the island ecosystems on Earth, Hawaii, wherever, okay, Australia, New Zealand, the number of invasives outnumber the native species now. Up to 70 to 80% of island biodiversity is composed of invasive species. Okay? And they're driving native species to extinction, especially on islands. On mainlands too, especially in India, we have a huge problem with invasive species. But most Indians do not understand anything about this problem. Okay. And today I'm going to take about 10 minutes to kind of explain to you what are invasive alien species and how we can manage them. It'll be a very brief outline. Okay. Next slide, please. So, like invasive species can both be, a predominantly exotic species जो कहीं और से उठ के हमारे देश में आए हैं, okay? But at the same time, we can also have native species that go haywire and start dominating ecosystems and taking over in ecosystems. In for this particular challenge, we'll only be focusing on alien invasive plant species, okay, and not on animal invasive species, okay, because we need to define the challenge, we need to keep it doable for students, okay. I'm sorry, but at this stage, I don't think I can give a recap. I will go through the remaining slides, and then if there are doubts, we could come back. Setu team, should I do a recap of the earlier slides or should I continue?
Ma'am, you can continue as they will get the recording in the YouTube.
ठीक है. Okay. Thank you. So, when it comes to plant species, plants are rooted in a place. They stay there all their lives, 300, 400, 700 years, some trees. Okay. Some plants, live for a few weeks or days. They produce seeds and die, and then the next generation is planted. Okay. Now, between these extremes of plant forms, which live for a few days to hundreds of years, okay, one thing is common, none of them can move, and the only mobile stage is their seed. Okay. Now, humans have been transporting seeds of exotic species all over the globe, in our shoes, in our ships, in our clothes, okay, on our farm animals, and we've transported a whole number of species to different continents. In South America, hamari katal, jackfruit, is invasive, okay. And in India, many South American and Central American species are invasive, okay. Be it Lantana camara, Chromalina odorita, okay, Prosopis julifora, all of this came from Central America, okay. And today they dominate both the forest and agricultural ecosystems. causing tremendous damage. Okay. Now, how did you get to this situation? ये कहाँ से आए, कब आए, और आज हमारी इतनी बुरी हालत क्यों है? ओके, ये सोचने की बात है. ओके, तो जैसे मैंने कहा, ज्यादातर ये आ रहे हैं थ्रू ह्यूमन मीन्स, हम ट्रांसपोर्ट करें इन स्पीशीज को, और सीड्स ये लगातार आते रहते हैं. कई विदेशी स्पीशीज, आपने एक्सोटिक प्लांट्स खरीदा अपने गार्डन के लिए, जैसे मैंने बताया 19th सेंचुरी में अंग्रेजों ने लाके लैंटाना इंट्रोड्यूस किया एज अ गार्डन हेज प्लांट, एंड टुडे इट्स अ ह्यूज हेडेक, नॉट जस्ट इंडिया, अक्रॉस मोस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. ओके, and once a species has been introduced, it's not always that it goes invasive. Most of your garden plants are not invasive, only some of them are invasive. Okay, so what makes an invasive species so dangerous is the fact that it can break beyond the garden, break out of your pots, and go out and like completely conquer surrounding ecosystem, be it agriculture or forest. They will take over, they will dominate, they will not allow native species to grow. They will go to the native, they will go to the extent, the invasive plant species, of stealing pollinators from the native plant species. They will steal dispersal agents from native plant species. They become super dominating. They completely take over. They will change the soil parameters and not allow native plant species to grow. Okay. Once they have colonized and established, okay, and spread to the landscape scale, to completely eradicate an invasive species is next to impossible. Something like Lantana or Chromolina odorata, only in our like hum sab. Um, there are certain management procedures that are possible, and we'll just come to that. 1 second, I need a break. Am I audible? Sorry. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. ठीक है, हाँ. Sorry, I just had to step out for a minute. Okay. So once they take over, it's impossible to, eradicate them. We can only manage them at the landscape model. Yes. Next slide, please. Okay. Next slide, please. Invasive species, once they take over, they start eating soil, and they don't allow grow. Next slide. Next slide. Any others? Okay. Any others? Cheetah. Excellent. Excellent. Again, an excellent answer. We lost the Asiatic cheetah in India around 47, 48 again. Okay. And now there are attempts to bring the African cheetah into India, but it's not the same. Remember, the Asiatic cheetah was quite different and it's extinct. We cannot bring it back. One horned rhino is still, you mean the Sumatran, but it's still found in other parts of Asia, though it's not found in India. So it's an extinction, a local extinction, but not a global extinction. Okay. We still have the Indian one-horned rhinoceros, which is still found in Kaziranga, but the Sumatran is now extinct. Yes, of course, vultures are very serious concern. There again, their numbers have plummeted, to lesser than 1,000. Okay, but the vultures have got so much attention. Every school, every student has heard about vultures facing this massive decline in the last 20 years. Everyone's heard of how it's going extinct across India. But I think most people in Uttarakhand, most people in India, and especially people in Udham Singh Nagar district itself haven't heard about this bird in your backyards, which is going extinct. We'll just come to that. Okay. Now, what is mass extinction? What's mass extinction? Can anyone describe? Okay.
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, extinctions happen when extension is happening on the mass level. Like when we talk about like I just wrote about the vultures, it was happening with the medicine called dicnofenac by the human intervention. So it was happening in the mass, like it was happening suddenly and on large scale. So
that is still with reference to a few species of vulture, 3 or 4 species. We have lost them very suddenly. The numbers have plummeted, but that's not exactly a mass extinction, though actually the vulture event is part of a larger global mass extinction. Mass extinction refers to periods in the Earth history when we have lost a huge number of species together. Okay. In the Earth's history, there have been 5, if not 6 recorded mass extinctions. The most famous being the Cretaceous extinction, which led to the extinction of dinosaurs. It wasn't one species; it was thousands of species, like 50 to 60 or 70% of Earth's biodiversity being wiped out together in a short period of time. Okay, mass extinctions have shaped Earth's evolutionary history. What survives after a mass extinction? The cockroach, for example, has survived several mass extinction, and it's a relic species which is still found on Earth. And what survived a mass extinction may stay as it was before, like the cockroach, or it may evolve to be something completely different, okay, and diversify and go on to produce many more species. As we speak today, here, everywhere on Earth, we're going through the Holocene mass extinction. We're losing species not just in India, not just in Uttarakhand, not just in Kashipur or Udham Singh Nagar district. We're losing species across the world at a phenomenal rate never witnessed before in Earth's history. The 6th mass extinction, the Holocene mass extinction we are living through right now, is probably the most drastic that Earth's ever witnessed in its history. Okay, so mass extinction is a phase when a lot of species are going extinct together. The Holocene mass extinction is largely anthropogenic, human-driven. A whole bunch of drivers which humans have brought to change the environment of the Earth, making it unsuitable for other species to exist. And we're probably going to drive ourselves to extinction as well because of this. Okay, so this next slide, please. Okay. The cheetah in India, as we just discussed, went extinct. The next slide. There are other Indian extinctions in the recent times. No, just stick here. This is the pink-headed duck, which was found in wetlands around Kolkata. Again, a rarer species which went extinct around 1949. There's another species which is probably extinct from Uttarakhand, but it's not been seen in a really long time, more than a century. 1878 is the last reported sighting of the Himalayan quail, which was primarily reported from around Masuri. Okay, and some records towards, I don't think that the really proper records towards Nainital. One of our friends, and in fact, my organization, Nature Science Initiative, is now on a survey to try and see if the Himalayan quail is still found in Uttarakhand. We're now, as of now, doing a survey, a very intense one, to see if the Himalayan quail is still found. It's not been seen since 1878. Okay, next slide. Here are the 4 species of weaver birds found in India. This fascinating group of birds are related to the sparrows. They're a passerine species. They're a finch species. They have thick bills. They're granivores. They eat seeds, primarily of grasses. Okay. They were extremely common in the Terai region. These 4 species are found in Udham Singh Nagar district, often nesting together close to wetlands. Okay. We have the Baya weaver, which is probably the most common, which has a little bit of back on its black coloration on its back and chest in the breeding season. The male has a bit of black on its back and chest, and a yellow head in the breeding season. The females are very difficult to tell apart. We're not talking about the females at all. Then we have the black-breasted weaver, which has more black on its chest than the Baya weaver does, and it doesn't have any black also found all around Udham Singh Nagar district. Okay, these 3, the Baya, the streaked, and the black-breasted, are relatively common. They're not endangered, but now, because of the loss of grasslands, they have become much rarer than 20 years ago. But of these, the finch, which is the largest weaver bird found in India and Nepal, the Indian subcontinent, it's got a prominent beak and a very thick, big head. It's it's a bit larger, a couple of centimeters larger than the other weavers. Okay, and it's completely yellow. There is no black on its head or back or its chest. Okay, there's a bit of streaking or black streaking on the wings, but the head is a bright golden yellow. Okay, the fins is highly endangered. There are probably less than 100 individuals left in India and Nepal. And as we speak, okay, the people who are part of this conversation today, in our lifetimes, this bird, हमारे होते हुए भी ये चिड़िया शायद extinct होगी. Okay, and we don't know why. We'll have to find out why, and we need to race against time to try and save the species. Next slide. Okay. So, as all of you know, weaver birds make fascinating nests. Males make these nests hanging from other trees or, grasses in some species, even from wires, electrical wires often, and or telephone wires. These nests are made of grasses. In the case of the finch Baya, it makes a very shabby nest with twigs, not just grasses, often twigs. Okay, and the finch Baya is known to do 2 kinds of nesting: an initial false nesting and a latest nesting in the months of August and September, which is its actual nesting. We don't understand why it does this. But what all the weaver birds do is the males build these nests, elaborate nests, because the females and the eggs have to be protected from other predators like crows and snakes, which eat their eggs and chicks. Okay, and they guard them. They show off to the females, saying, "Come, check me out. I'm so strong. I built you this beautiful nest." And the females then choose the male based on the quality of the nest. Now, if the female decides to come there, then they go on to complete the nest. Okay, so this intense competition when weaver birds are breeding, the males will be like chirping and calling and trying to get the females over. And they're very vocal. Okay, and it keeps trying to steal females from each other. It's fascinating watching them. Okay, outside of the breeding season, they're very, very difficult to tell apart because both the males and females come back to this dull brown plumage and look very much like sparrows. Next slide. Okay. So the fence weaver, there are just a couple of sites now left in Uttarakhand where it's seen. One is near Haridwar, again, that's not been seen in some time. And there's one site near Gular Boj where it's still being seen. We've just seen it about 10 days ago with some of you here in this conversation. And at the Gular Boj site, we have about 50 breeding pairs, according to the researcher working there. And in the last decade or so, we don't have a single successful chick being reared at Gular Boj or anywhere in Uttarakhand. Okay, there is also fins we were breeding in Nepal, just across about 60-70 kilometers from where you are in Shukla Phanta. Okay, and there it has bred successfully even recently, but in Uttarakhand there are no successful breeding records in over a decade. Okay, in UP the status is not exactly known, but in one site in UP there is attempts to now captively breed a bird and reintroduce it. There are sites in Northeast India, but that's a different subspecies, Manas in Assam, where the fence weaver is breeding, but it's very different from the northern subspecies we have here in Uttarakhand, UP, and Nepal. Okay, very few birds remain, less than 250 possibly between Uttarakhand, UP, and Nepal. Okay, and they haven't been breeding too well. Now, why aren't they breeding too well? They get, next slide, please. Okay. What's happening with the fence weaver? Why is it going extinct? As I said, it's a really large weaver. It's a beautiful golden colored bird, very attractive. And it's been caught by traders for global bird trade. You know, after the drug trade across the world, the biggest money spinner is wildlife trade. The fins ranks very, very high on the global wildlife bird trade. Okay, across its range, it's been caught. It's still being caught by trappers for trading. Okay, which is probably the reason why it's in this state today. Alongside that, as I mentioned before, the wetlands in the Tarai region are gone. They're mostly converted to agriculture. Also, there were some 17 to 18 sites where the bird was breeding in Udham Singh Nagar district, where all the big factories around Rudrapur stand today. In the last 20 years, लालकुआ और रुद्रपुर के बीच में छोटे छोटे जो वेटलैंड्स जहां पर फिंस की ब्रीडिंग हो रही थी 15-20 साइट, वो सारे के सारे गायब हो गए, सिर्फ गुलर बोझ बचा है. Okay, loss of habitat, industry. Okay? And finally, what has been seen at the Gularbod site in Shukla Phanta in Northeast is fins जो है अपना घोंसला बनाती है, अंडे देती है, बच्चे भी हो जाते कई बार, बट कौवे इनको छोड़ते नहीं. जो भी बच्चा थोड़ा बड़ा हुआ उनको कौवे मार के खा लेते हैं. अब ये कौवे और बाकी चिड़िया इनको इनसे कैसे बचाए? ओके, ये एक सोचने की बात है. ओके, इनको प्रोटेक्शन कैसे दे. और वेटलैंड्स जो बचे हैं अभी उधम सिंह नगर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में इतने सारे हैं. आप देखेंगे थुमरिया है, आपकी इधर नानक सागर है, गुलर बोझ के आसपास 2 बड़े वेटलैंड से एक छोटी सी जगह पे ब्रीडिंग हो रही है. इतनी बड़ी एरिया, वहां पर बाकी एरिया में ब्रीडिंग क्यों नहीं हो रही है? ओके, आपकी एक और इधर जो रुद्रपुर के पास, रुद्रपुर और नानक माता के बीच में जो है वेटलैंड, वो भी बहुत बढ़िया वेटलैंड है, उसकी नाम मैं बोल रही हूँ. ओके, इन जगह में अब फिंस वाया ब्रीड क्यों नहीं हो रही है? या वहां पर है और हमने देखा नहीं, ये भी हो सकता है. ओके, बट द क्वेश्चन इज वहां पर ट्रैपर्स ने पकड़ लिया, या वहां पर कुछ ग्रासेस की कमी है, उसकी हैबिटेट रेस्टोर करना है, या वहां पर प्रदूषण ज्यादा हो गया है, इस वजह से वहां पर जो है अब बर्ड्स ब्रीड नहीं कर पा रहे. ये सारे सवाल अभी किसी ने भी आंसर नहीं किया है. ओके, हमें पता नहीं है. ओके, बट हमारे पास टाइम बहुत कम है, and we need to get innovative if we want to save the species, and that's what we are hoping that students here at SETU can do. that you can think about this problem very deeply. Look at what has been done globally to save birds like the finns that are on the verge of extinction. What are the programs that people, scientists and conservation biologists have come up across the world to save species like the finns, and come up with an action plan that we can take to our authorities, put forth to them, and say that this is what we need to do to save this highly endangered bird. Okay, so we'll stop here. I hope if there are any questions, we'll take them. Okay.
So, if anybody has any queries, you can ask right away. Anyone? So, it seems nobody has any queries.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and we could wrap this up for now, and we'll be having more detailed discussions for each topic after the teams are identified. Okay. And Pankaj sir will be giving a talk in a couple of days. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed an enlightening session. As the session comes to its end, I would extend a sincere gratitude to our dedicated panelists for being our torch bearer.
Thank you, Saumya ma'am. Also, a heartfelt thanks, Veteran, for joining us and making this session a success. As you all are aware, next workshop is on 20th August, where we will be diving deep into the challenges. See you all there. Have a great evening.
Thank you.